Good afternoon, everyone. For this week's discussion questions, should the focus of preaching be centered around national holidays, cultural events, and etc.? In my opinion, nationalism is a growing religion in America that is increasing tribalism. Therefore, preaching that reinforces nationalistic sentiments should be somewhat curtailed, in my opinion, to avoid creating the idea or reinforcing the idea that Christianity is a white man's religion or America is of Christianity or capitalism is a form of Christianity, when in fact Christianity indicts a lot of our country's ideals and systems. I also think that preachers should observe those cultural events because faith tells a people's story, which is innately cultural. Number two, I think preaching in the gospel in the light of national holidays offers preachers the opportunity to critique the culture and the nation. It's not the time in which to paint a perfect picture of society. We are always supposed to be judging our nation, our culture, our surroundings through the prism of the Bible. The Bible should be the lens in which we view the world and judge the world, and so we have to hold society juxtaposed to our Christian faith. The challenge to preaching the gospel in the light of a national holiday or cultural observation event is that it morphs Christianity into a faith of one and not all. There are a number of churches where the Independence Day, of course, the Independence Day celebrates the day that America declared its independence from England. It's the day that America stood up against oppression and stood up for liberty. Nevertheless, it's also the day where American was declared independent for white males declared their independence, because it's not a time in which minorities, women, African Americans, Native Americans, and etc. was able to celebrate their freedom or exercise their civil liberties of free speech and have the equal opportunity. And so when we are challenged to ensure that Christianity does not become pigeonholed to a certain segment of our demographic of people, because historically Christianity has been the religion of white males. Historically, Christianity, the white church has preached a doctrine that made Native Americans, African Americans like myself, and many other minorities feel less than human and unworthy of God's grace and mercy. It made American the the favorite of God, and gave America a divine right to rule over other nations. And so we have to keep that in mind, because Christ is not American, and neither is Christianity a product or property of United States of America, capitalism, our form of democracy, of government, and etc. Respond to the concerns raised in advice to the lecture. I think, as I've stated earlier, for some of the reasons why I think I somewhat are in the middle between agreeing and disagreeing. I believe you can observe national holidays and cultural events if you're doing it the right way. I think observing those cultural events is a opportunity for churches to be inclusive. If predominantly white churches would embrace teaching Black history, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful, because it would allow the church to see the world through the experiences of black people. It would be also wonderful if the Black church would also take into account and start celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and Women's History Month. It's always good, in my idea, in my mind, to be inclusive and to be respectful of the sacrifices and contributions of others. And so I think that it can be done if you do it right. It's not an opportunity to exalt or Christian your beliefs regarding your patriotism, or your, what patriotism is to you. It's the opportunity to ensure that everything is coincides with Scripture. And so, the Constitution and everything takes a backdrop to Scripture. In the past, I heard Pastor Hagee preach a sermon on the 4th of July that stated America needed to go back in time to 1776, which was a time where most minorities and women were denied their civil rights. It is disingenuous because it ignores historical oppression, and the oppressed fight for justice, liberty, and equality for all. I think it's dangerous because it also creates the misconception that America was great, and it also implies that it was greater because other people were did not have those rights and those opportunities. And not only is it disingenuous because of that, but it's also quite dismissive and demeaning to most people, because it's fragrance with patriotism, tribalism, and a form of evangelism that has been quite dangerous and divisive in the Christian church in America.